defense ministers, senior officials, business leaders, and security experts worldwide gather at Shangri-La Dialogue 2025 in Singapore starting on May the 30th. It's a time for talks for Asia's most pressing security challenges. Speaking of security matters, the U.S. House passed a sweeping tax and spending bill on May the 22nd. U.S. President Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill, as he called it, is raising concerns over the spiraling U.S. debt, which has reached 124% of the country's GDP. If passed by the Senate, the bill would bring U.S. Department of Defense budget to nearly $1 trillion in the year 2026 fiscal year. So how will this impact the rest of the world, and how is the money being spent in the United States? I want to ask you about that as well, Professor. Your immediate reaction to the proportion of defense spending in that bill.
I have to recall that in 2020, Trump was bragging. He says, we've totally rebuilt the military. This is during his first term. He said 2.5 trillion. We've invested 2.5 trillion in all the greatest equipment in the world. And so now again, 4 years later, 5 years later, we're going to make the military great again with a $1 trillion budget. Now, I think on the one hand, this is pandering to congressional Republicans who love to spend money on the military, but it's also in line with again the Jacksonian principle that above all, the federal government needs to spend on defense.
Now, how much danger is there as a result of this?
It's clear that he wants to use this defense bill to rebuild the shipping industry, this through the military-industrial complex, and this would include effectively government subsidies for related infrastructure. And then obviously, there's this thing where they want to expand domestic missions, working with the Department of Homeland Service or security, but I think that, if we were looking at this from another perspective, where we've seen some critics alleging that this is a Trump White House that isn't committed to democracy, that is committed to some sort of authoritarianism, I would suggest that states and congressional leaders should be very, very nervous that and not to be conspiratorial here, but given what we saw with the so-called attempted coup after his first election loss, is he laying the groundwork for a military coup? Is he building a military apparatus that would be able to exert power in the states in ways that run very contrary to what is supposed to be the mission of the U.S. military?
So now when the Shangri-La Dialogue, which is supposed to be a platform helping the East and the West, the North and South come together, especially under the current circumstances, what do you think? How do you think issues should be shaped for peace rather than for war?
Well, I'm a big believer that the Global South in particular, and a lot of the countries that will be represented at the Shangri-La, their primary concern is the need to cooperate, to work together to withstand the existential risks associated with climate change, and the need to promote greater mutual security, trade, and development. All of these things at this moment when we are in this new era where China has risen as a major technological power and the United States is struggling to sustain its position. This creates a lot of uncertainties, but these sorts of uncertainties can be managed by other countries building strategic partnerships with each other and making sure that they can withstand these challenges together.
Professor Mahoney, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.